Up a very special guest coming all the way from Canada, Mr. Brad Edgar of bradedgar.com, where you can go and learn just about anything you want to about dashboards. A lot of dashboard products out there. So tell me, how does a guy from Canada who's making his living in the technology side of an ERP system come to own bradedgar.com? You might explain that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I think when I started, the biggest thing was I had a lot of people coming to me asking for help, and I realized that I realized that I was getting pretty good at what I was doing, obviously in Excel. So there's definitely, I had tons of people starting to come to help. So I said, you know what, I think I'm going to start bradedgar.com, and I figured, you know what, I'll use my own name and my domain. So and when I did that, the biggest thing that I thought was, I want to be able to help people kind of understand how businesses work and use data essentially to answer questions that we have about business, common business problems. And I realized that Excel basically had all the tools to do that. And I think one of the biggest things I ever came across, it's funny that we were talking about pivot tables, because pivot tables was my absolute savior. So I think when I started using pivot tables, I realized that you can basically summarize any set of information in any way you wanted to. And it was just a big revelation for me. And then from there, I kind of just wanted to start learning everything I could about Excel. So now I'm kind of at the point where I'm using it, and I'm basically training people on how to use dashboards on my website. But I'm also kind of diving into some of the other topics, like how you can become an Excel guru, for example, was one of my recent blog posts, and just using essentially all of the different tools that are out there now with the internet. So I think the internet has brought obviously a lot of you know, it's just an easy place to find anything you need about learning any subject. But Excel, over the last even couple years, I've seen has got a lot of different gurus out there coming into the business. So I'm just kind of enjoying that. Yeah.
You know, it's kind of a similar story that we hear from a lot of people who come on the show. Certainly, whenever I first realized that I might be good at it, it was kind of a surprise to me. And I was in finance, and gosh, this must have been 15 years or so ago. This Lotus 1, 2, 3 days, and you spend enough time in finance, 40 hours a week, kind of churning through spreadsheets, and after a while, you realize people are saying, "Wow, you're pretty good at that." And I heard something pretty similar from Bill Jello whenever he was on the show. We asked him, how do you start up Mr. Excel? He says, well, you know, I look to my left and I look to my right and say, well, I know Excel better than those two people, so I might as well be Mr. Excel.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess
it's like how people become surgeons. They're like, well, nobody else is doing it, so I'll just wing it.
I could cut better than that person.
Yeah, for sure. And I think recently, I think from my end too, what I've really found to be useful is I don't think a lot of people focus on getting the right information into Excel. So, I mean, one of the things for me is just finding good ways to get multiple sources of data, bringing it together, and then building a dashboard out of that. Now, obviously, I hadn't been using Power Query a whole lot, but everybody loves a good old VLOOKUP, obviously. So I was using that with index match a lot to kind of merge tables and information together to build answers to common business questions. And what I just realized, probably in the past couple months, I started to play with Power Query a lot, and I've realized that it's absolutely amazing. So I think that's kind of something that I'm starting to dive into a little bit more, and I'm hoping to kind of start to elaborate a little bit on the topic, obviously, on my website. And I've realized a lot of the companies out there, like for example, the one that I'm with right now, we've got Salesforce, we work in Oracle, we work in just multiple different systems, even a homegrown manufacturing execution system. And what you can do with Power Query is actually pull all that information together, build up these enormous and just great data sets, and then from there just answer basically anything that you need to answer, right? So
how does a person who starts to become really good at Excel and kind of has that sort of technical know-how or something that you're starting to become good at, how do you parlay that into dashboards?
Yeah, so I think, like I said, the first thing was just, I guess, yeah, like I had kind of said earlier too, it's just getting the information was the big part, but once you get the information, you got to know what to do with it, right? So that's kind of where dashboards come into place. Once I started to learn how to get the information in there, I wanted to learn what the important formulas were. So I started to learn things like sum if, average ifs, and pivot tables, obviously, to summarize data. And then I kind of learned, obviously, from people like Shandu, who have great, great websites, how to build front-end dashboards, from like a calculated sheet. So you got three sections. You have your data, you got your calculated sheets, and then you have your front-end dashboard essentially on a separate page. And tying that all in on your calculated sheet from all the data sets that you've kind of combined is basically what we've done. And I think I've built a few products like that now on my website, excuse me, and I started selling some of the dashboards. So, and seems to be picking up and people enjoy it. And it kind of, I think not only does it simplify the process for some of the people that are out there trying to learn dashboards, but I think some people use them and then apply them in the business world, obviously. So,
Right, Jordan?
So something I ran into when I was doing training last week is someone said, so what is a dashboard? And having written that Dashboards for Excel book, when I first started writing it, I was I was obsessed with that Stephen Few definition that it only had to be one page. But really, by the time I actually finished the book, which did take forever, I had a lot of time to evolve. And, I stopped caring what it really meant in the sense that people needed things in Excel that were interactive. And I thought this is what they need, so this is what I should give to them. So I was just wondering if you sort of ran into that, if there were if you had certain dashboard principles, certain things that should or shouldn't be on there, or just your thoughts around that.
yeah, I think you know what? I think that's up to the user, right? Like anything else, I think if you're going to be able to get the ultimate person that you're doing the dashboard for, let's say it's your boss or an executive or whatever, I think you want to make sure that you're covering all your bases for what they're requesting, I guess. So if it ends up working and you're offering up the solution or the answer to that person, I said, I think that whatever is the easiest way and whatever is the best way for yourself and to make sure you get that point across, right? I think where people lose it is, some people, like we said, I mean, everybody talks about it nowadays too, is that, people are trying to make everything too pretty and too nice and whatever else. But I think, there's definitely a place for it. I think there's a happy medium between the two. As you can see in my dashboards, I love visually appealing things, but you just got to make sure you focus on the right key points of information that the dashboard is ultimately out there to do, right? So, yeah.
I have a question. Yeah, so Brad, I'm curious, as someone who is, you mentioned you're just now kind of really getting into Power Query and building dashboards from back-end databases. Were you an Access guy before you got into all of this? And I don't know if we've talked about this on the show before, but I'm curious where you stand on, sometimes I'm still a little bit fuzzy on, well, I could do this in Access or I could do it in Power Query. So do you have any preferences there in terms of when you have to shape data in such a way that you can do your reports? Yeah. Which tools do you find most user-friendly?
I'm definitely the advocate for Power Query now. I think Access is becoming more and more limited, unfortunately. And Power Query is kind of going with the way of the future where you're trying to integrate and make data more actionable. I think that's kind of where the world is going. Dashboards, I'm not going to say they're dead, but I'm going to say that, really the key focus is you want to make things actionable for the people that are looking at it. And nowadays, there's just so much information out there. And if you're a company, I think things like Twitter and things like LinkedIn, and then integrating all of that information, your email marketing, integrating all of that into one specific place is great, right? And I think Power Query is now giving you that opportunity. It not only, I was looking at it the other day, and you can actually write your own advanced editor, use APIs from Google Analytics, use APIs to do anything, right? So even if they haven't built that connection source yet, it's available for you to do on your own, right? So Power Query.
So you're Power Query. That's not entirely surprising. Do you find that people's minds are blown when you tell them no more VLOOKUP? If you're building a data model and you're relating tables, I happen to be working somewhere where there is just tremendous amounts of data and there's VLOOKUPs everywhere. And they're crazy. They're crashing all these Excel files. And that's part of the reason I'm here. So I'm just curious if you've run into that phenomenon, because I try to tell people, well, you don't really need VLOOKUP if you do it this way, and mind's blown.
Yeah, I think that I think there's a place for VLOOKUP, right? And honestly, I think the nice thing about Power Query is that it allows you to merge data successfully always and every time, as long as you get your joins correct, right? So
Yeah.
doing that, yeah, you don't have to worry about the errors. You don't have to worry about adding value in front of your lookup value or trim or whatever else to make sure that you're actually capturing, and you don't have to have 1,000 if error statements within that VLOOKUP.
Right.
So the Power Query function does that very well. I think there's definitely a place, like if you're building, I'm not going to say basic spreadsheets, but if you have a couple of tables, you need a small set of data, yeah, it's definitely a great place for VLOOKUP. An index match, I mean, I still use them all the time, let's be real, but I'm getting my hands into Power Query now, and I'm just realizing that a lot of that work is not necessary, right?
Mm.
Here, Kim Poles say it will change your life.
Yeah.
He's not wrong.
Yeah.
So I do have a few questions from your fellow bloggers. They understand that you were going to be on the show, and they were like, oh, I want to stump him with this one. So they couldn't wait to get at you. So first question comes from Chris Newman over at thespreadsheetguru.com. He's also been on the show, gosh, about 6 episodes or so ago. And his question to you, Mr. Brad Edgar, is where do you get your design inspiration from while creating your dashboards?
You know what? I started using a software called Canva probably about a year ago. And when I started using it, I kind of realized that there was a lot of different, obviously there's a lot of different templates out there and a lot of people doing certain things. And then I just kind of grew inspiration off of, or got inspiration, I should say, off of a lot of people's work that was already out there. They had cool posts that had kind of color schemes, matching color schemes that you could use, and then how to kind of mix and match fonts. So I did a little bit of learning on Canva, and they had some cool courses and stuff like that that you could follow. And then I kind of integrated those color schemes into my dashboards. Whether or not it was necessary, I think it just brings a little bit to the look and feel and the vibe of the spreadsheet. So it's just yeah, that's basically where I would have came from. So
next question comes from Amy Dabblecar from exploringexcel.com. So the question is, what would you prefer for dashboards? A dynamic or static dashboard for small and big data analysis?
So what would can you repeat that again for me?
Sure, I said that in a really awkward way.
Yeah.
It's one of those things you get halfway through the sentence and you realize there actually were no commas. So, what would you prefer for dashboards, comma, a dynamic dashboard or static dashboard for small and big data analysis? So you got small data analysis, big data analysis. You also have dynamic and static dashboards. Which do you prefer in which scenario?
Okay, so definitely I think obviously to me, I guess it's not obvious, but to me for a smaller dashboard, static dashboards would maybe be the route. I'm always the advocate for dynamic just because I like to make sure that I don't have to do anything after I've set it up. So if I want to dump new data into my model, I can just dump new data into it. And I definitely say always, wherever you can, use Excel tables when you're building your data models because it makes life a heck of a lot easier. And I think if you can merge your data outside of the spreadsheet, like I said, using a tool like Power Query, that's a good spot to do that, I think so.
Sounds great. Over to you, Jordan.
Sure. So I heard that question. I kind of wanted to give my 2 cents in it, and I actually am just going to circle back to what Brad had said initially, which is, whether to do static or interactive. A lot of that just depends on the client. I will say that I've tried to do, with small data, it's very easy to do things that are static because there's not a lot of things you need to change. But even then, I've had clients ask me, isn't there a way I can change these things? So. I don't know that there's a clean answer for that. I think it really depends on what the client wants. Definitely, static dashboards are great if you know you're going to print it out. If you are going to use the Excel spreadsheet and present that on the screen, which is what I always try to do, interactive is great because you can answer questions right in front of people.